A developer opens the SDK and expects magic. They call a function, pass a prompt, and wait for a production agent to appear. The first result works, the second result fails quietly, the third result changes the wrong assumption. That is when the SDK stops being a novelty and becomes a boundary you must design. This is lesson 14 in Claude Code Production AI Agents. Today we explain the SDK in one sitting: the mental model, the moving parts, and the operational responsibilities that do not disappear. In Lesson 13, we decided when to leave the CLI. The rule was simple: do not leave the CLI to look mature. Leave when the runtime requirements demand it. The SDK is one of those runtime choices. The SDK mental model is straightforward. Your host application owns the flow. It starts a query or agent run. It passes options and context. Claude Code performs the task through the configured environment. Messages stream back. Your application decides what to store, show, approve, or reject. The visible artifact is the SDK architecture map: host app, query call, options, agent runtime, tool activity, messages, result, logs. The SDK call is one part of the diagram, not the whole production system. Use this checklist before treating the workflow as ready. Model, tools, working directory, permissions, timeouts. These are not decorative boxes. They are the operating questions that decide whether the agent can be trusted outside a demo. Use this checklist before treating the workflow as ready: identity, state, secrets, logs, retries. These are not decorative boxes. They are the operating questions that decide whether the agent can be trusted outside a demo. In practice, this example has 4 parts: status, artifact, evidence, uncertainty. The point is to make the agent's work inspectable rather than asking everyone to trust a polished final answer. Use this checklist before treating the workflow as ready. Not a policy system alone, not free observability, not automatic safety. These are not decorative boxes. They are the operating questions that decide whether the agent can be trusted outside a demo. Think about an SDK run as a stream of evidence. A start event tells you what task was requested. An assistant message explains reasoning or intent. A tool request shows the action boundary. A tool result shows what happened. The final answer should be connected to that chain. If your application only stores the final answer, you have thrown away the material needed to debug and govern the run. The host application contract is explicit. It owns identity, who asked for this. It owns state, what the workflow remembers outside the model context. It owns secrets, what credentials are available and how they are protected. It owns logs, what can be reconstructed later. It owns approvals, when a human decision is required. The SDK does not remove those responsibilities. A good SDK integration returns a structured result, not just prose. It includes an artifact, status, evidence links, uncertainty, and next action. It has a trace link. It handles errors without pretending partial work succeeded. It has timeouts and cancellation. These details are what make the integration operate like software rather than like a chat window hidden inside an app. A useful mental model is a remote specialist. You brief specialist, define the scope, give access to the right materials, receive updates, and decide what to do with the result. If the brief is vague or access is uncontrolled, the result may still sound confident. A Python agent skeleton usually has a prompt, options, a way to stream or collect messages, and result handling. The important part is not only the code shape, it is what the host does with intermediate messages, tool calls, errors, and final artifacts. A TypeScript agent skeleton follows the same pattern: configure the environment, run the query, observe messages, handle tool activity, and return a structured result. The language changes. The operating questions remain the same. Message handling matters. You may see assistant messages, tool use messages, tool result messages, and a final response. If your application hides those messages, you lose the evidence trail. If it stores them carelessly, you may create a data exposure issue. The common mistake is hiding the transcript. Teams build a polished prod interface that only shows the final answer. Then debugging, audit, and user trust all become harder. A production SDK integration should preserve enough trace to explain what happened. Let us recap Lesson 14. The SDK embeds Claude Code inside another runtime. Your host owns identity, state, secrets, logs, retries, and user experience. The SDK gives you a boundary. It does not automatically give you operations. The lesson learned is this: the SDK embeds the loop. It does not remove the need to design the loop. Subscribe to Claude Code Production AI Agents. The companion book is linked in the description. In Lesson 15, we look at tools, hooks, and subagents from the SDK side.